Welcome back to Strong, Confident, and Informed, the podcast where we go beyond surface level fitness advice and actually help you understand what's driving your results. I'm Danielle Lemoyne, an online fitness coach who helps women build strength, lose fat, and most importantly, stay consistent without constantly starting over. Today's episode is one that I've wanted to do for quite a while because I think mobility is one of the most misunderstood parts of health and fitness. If you ever said that, oh, I'm just getting older, or that you always feel stiff when you wake up, or that your hips feel tight, that your shoulder clicks sometimes, or that you just can't get into a squat properly, then this episode is for you. Because here's the thing, most people know they should work on mobility, but the problem is they have absolutely no idea what that actually means. So they Google mobility routine, they find a random YouTube video, they stretch for maybe 10 minutes, feel a little better, and then by tomorrow morning, everything feels exactly the same again. So they think, mobility just doesn't work for me. But honestly, the mobility probably wasn't the problem. The approach was. Today, I want to teach you mobility the same way that I coach my clients. Not just a bunch of random stretches, not spending an hour rolling around on a foam roller. I want you to actually understand what mobility is, why your body gets stiff in the first place, and then I'm going to give you the exact 10-minute routine that I recommend to almost everyone. Whether you're lifting weights, running, walking, or you simply want your body to feel better throughout the day. Because if there's one thing I've learned over the years, it's that strength gets all the attention, but mobility is what allows you to keep being strong for years to come. So let's dive into it. If I walked into a gym and asked 100 people, let's say, what is mobility? I think 95 of them would tell me stretching. And honestly, I don't blame them. That's what most of us have been taught. Mobility equals stretching. Touch your toes, pull your quads, stretch your hamstrings, hold it for 30 seconds, done. But that's not actually mobility. Stretching is one small piece of mobility, but it's not mobility itself. And that distinction is incredibly important because you can be incredibly flexible and still have terrible mobility. Let me explain that. Imagine someone doing the splits. They're obviously flexible, but if they can't control that position, if they can't produce strength in that range, if their joints don't feel stable, they actually don't have great mobility. On the flip side, you could have someone who can't quite do the splits, but they have excellent control over every position their body moves through. They're stable, strong, balanced, comfortable. That's mobility. One of my favorite ways to explain this is flexibility is your ability to get into a position. Mobility is your ability to own that position. Those are two very different things. And own is really the key word here. Can your body move there? Can it stay there? Can it produce force there? Can it control itself there? Because if the answer is no, your brain is going to protect you. And protection often feels like tightness. This is something that completely changed how I looked at mobility. For years, I thought my hips were just tight or my hamstrings were tight. Now, sometimes, yes, a muscle might genuinely need some length, but far more often, your nervous system is saying, I'm not sure I trust you here. So instead of giving you more movement, it creates tension because tension is protection. Think about spraining your ankle. Everything tightens up afterwards. Why? Your body isn't trying to punish you. It's trying to protect you. The exact same thing can happen with your hips, your shoulders, your back, your neck. If your brain feels unstable, it often responds by creating stiffness, which means stretching alone doesn't solve the problem because your brain is still going to say, I don't trust this position. And that's why so many people stretch the exact same muscles every single day for years without actually improving anything. Here's another example for you. Have you ever noticed that you stretch your hip flexors, they feel amazing, and then 20 minutes later they start to feel tight again? That's incredibly common. And it's one of the biggest clues that the issue isn't simply muscle length. Because if it was, one stretch would solve it. Instead, your body keeps returning to that tight feeling. Why? Because your brain still believes it needs that tension. That's where mobility becomes so much more interesting than stretching. Because now we're not asking, how do I force more range? We're asking the question, why does my body keep protecting this area? And that's a completely different conversation. And honestly, it's a much more effective one. Now, don't get me wrong. I stretch, I foam roll, I use the massage balls. I think they all have their place. But here's where people get stuck. They stop there. They roll, stretch, stand up, and then go about their day and wonder why nothing changed. Imagine this. Let's say you have a really squeaky door hinge, okay? So every morning you spray a little lubricant on it. It feels better. Then the next morning it's squeaky again. So you spray it again. The next day, same thing. At some point, wouldn't you start asking, maybe something else is causing this? Your body works the same way. If you constantly have to stretch the same exact muscles, it's worth asking why. Because the tightness is often a symptom, it's not the root cause. One of the philosophies that has really influenced how I coach mobility is this: release, lengthen, activate, move. And in that order. Let me explain. Maybe we start by foam rolling the quads or glutes, okay? That's the release. Then maybe we do a hip flexor stretch. That's lengthening. But then we activate. Maybe it's glute bridges, dead bugs, a banded lateral walk. Because now we're teaching our brain, hey, you're safe here. Then we move. We squat, lunge, we hinge, we walk, we run. Because movement is where your body actually learns, not lying on the floor. Movement is the classroom. This is one of the biggest differences between passive mobility and active mobility. Passive mobility is someone pushing you into a stretch or gravity pulling you into a stretch. Active mobility is you creating movement yourself, using your muscles, controlling the range, building strength there. That's where long-term change happens. Because if your body becomes stronger in a position, it becomes more willing to let you stay there. I also think this is why so many people say, I stretched for months and nothing changed. Well, did you ever teach your body what to do with that new range? Or did you simply keep asking for more range? Those are very different things. Think about it this way. Imagine someone gave you an extra 20 degrees of shoulder movement overnight. Boom. That's great. But if your muscles don't know how to control it, your brain is probably going to tighten everything back up because uncontrolled movement feels unsafe. So instead, we build control, we build strength, we build confidence, and over time, your body starts saying, okay, I trust this now. That's why I tell people all the time, mobility isn't about becoming more bendy. It's about becoming more capable, about moving better, feeling better, maybe squatting deeper, running smoother, picking up your kids without your back yelling at you, right? That's what mobility is really about. It's not some Instagram stretch. It's giving your body the movement options it needs to support the life you want to live. And once you start looking at mobility through that lens, things change. Now that we've talked about what mobility actually is, I think the next logical question becomes, why do we get tight in the first place? Because I don't know about you, but there have been plenty of mornings where I've rolled out of bed and thought, why do I feel like I'm 90 years old today? Or maybe you've gotten up from your desk after sitting for a couple of hours and your hips feel stiff, your back feels tight, and you're walking around for the first 30 seconds trying to straighten yourself out. Does that sound familiar? Most people assume their muscles are just tight. And while sometimes that's true, yes, I actually think tight is one of the most overused words in fitness because most of the time, tightness is your body's way of communicating with you. It's sending you information. The question is, are you listening to what it's actually trying to say? One of the biggest mindset shifts I've had over the years is realizing that our bodies are incredibly smart. They're always trying to protect us. They're not trying to make life harder. They're not trying to punish us. They're constantly asking one question. Do I feel safe here? If the answer is yes, your body allows movement. If the answer is no, your body often creates tension. That's where tightness comes from. Let's use your hips as an example because I hear this one all the time. My hips are so tight. Okay, maybe. But let's ask another question. Why? If you sit for 8 hours a day, your hips are spending most of their time in one position. Your body adapts to that. If you never take your hips through that full range of motion, your body is going to adapt to that. If your glutes aren't doing their job very well, your hip flexors often start working overtime. Your body adapts to that too. Do you see the pattern? Your body is constantly adapting to whatever you ask of it or what you don't ask of it. One thing I tell people all the time is that your body is incredibly efficient. It doesn't care whether your movement patterns are good. It cares whether they're familiar. If you slouch all day, your body gets really good at slouching. If you sit all day, your body gets really good at sitting. If you only ever move in one direction, your body gets really good in moving in that direction. Because your brain is constantly saying, oh, this is what we do now. Now, let's talk about stress for a second. Because this is a piece I think that gets overlooked a little bit. Think about what your body does when you're stressed. Your shoulders creep up, your jaw tightens, maybe you clench your teeth, your breathing gets shallower, your neck feels tighter. You probably aren't thinking, okay, shoulders, tense up now. It just happens. Your nervous system responds to stress before you're even aware of it. And if that stress becomes chronic, your body starts living there. This is one of the reasons I always tell clients that mobility isn't just physical. It's neurological, it's emotional, because your body doesn't separate those things the way we do. I actually noticed this myself when I was training for my half marathon. I had a really stressful work day and then went out for a run. My stride felt a little different. My shoulders were a little tighter. My breathing was a little shallower. I wasn't moving the same way I normally would. That workout was changed. I changed. And that changed how my body moved. That's why mobility isn't just about muscles. It's about our whole system. Another thing that can create tightness, weakness. Now, I know that sounds backwards. People usually think if something's tight, I should stretch it. But sometimes the muscle that's feeling tight is actually working overtime because another muscle isn't pulling its weight. I see this a lot with the glutes. Someone says, my hip flexors are constantly tight. Then we look at how they're moving. And their glutes aren't really contributing to that movement. So those hip flexors are trying to stabilize everything. They're working overtime. So of course they're going to feel tight. They're exhausted. Your body is incredibly good at finding a way to get the job done, even if it means using the wrong muscles. And that's why mobility work has to look at the whole picture, not just the sore spot, because the sore spot isn't always the problem. Sometimes it's just the victim. Now, I want to teach you something that completely changed the way I coach movement. And once you understand this, you're going to start looking at your body very differently. There's a concept in movement science called the joint by joint approach. Now, don't let that fancy name scare you. It's actually really simple. The idea is that different joints have different jobs. Some joints are designed to be mobile. Others are designed to be stable. Let's start from the ground up. Your ankles, they should move. Your knees, they're meant to be stable. Your hips, lots of movement. Your lower back, stable. Your upper back, movement. Your shoulders, movement. And your neck, a combination of stability and controlled mobility. Now, why does this matter? Because if one joint stops doing its job, another joint usually tries to pick up the slack. Let's use ankle mobility as an example. If your ankles don't move very well, your knees or your hips often have to compensate. Or maybe your foot collapses inwards, or maybe your heels start lifting during a squat. It's all connected. Your body doesn't just say, well, the ankle isn't moving today, so I guess we're going to stop. No, it figures something out. It's incredibly resourceful. The problem is those compensations often lead to pain later. I see this a lot with people's lower backs. Someone says, my back always hurts when I squat. So we look at their squat, and often their hips don't move very well, or their ankles don't move very well. So instead of getting movement where they should, their lower back starts moving more than it was ever designed to. Then they think, I have a bad back. Maybe, but maybe your back has just been doing everybody else's job. The same thing happens with our shoulders. If your upper back is stiff, your shoulder has to work harder. Then you start feeling pinching or clicking or occasional discomfort. And again, people think, my shoulder is the problem. Sometimes it is, but sometimes your shoulder is just trying to compensate for something else. This is one of the reasons I don't believe in random mobility routines. I don't think everybody needs the exact same exercises, okay? Do I think there are some movements that almost everybody benefits from? Absolutely. And I'm going to walk you through those in a minute. But the best mobility program is one that addresses your limitations. Not your neighbors, not the person on Instagram, yours. One thing I always encourage clients to do is become curious instead of frustrated. Instead of saying, why can't I squat lower? Ask the question of, what's stopping me? Instead of saying that your shoulders are terrible, ask the question, what part of the movement isn't working well? That little shift can change things because now you're solving problems instead of just complaining about them. I also want to say this because I think it's important. Pain doesn't always mean damage. Sometimes pain is simply your body's way of saying, hey, I don't love what we're doing right now. Now, obviously, if you're dealing with significant pain, injuries, or something that isn't improving, I always recommend seeing a qualified physiotherapist, chiropractor, sports medicine physician, or other healthcare provider who can properly assess what's going on. But for so many people, the stiffness they feel every day isn't because their body is broken. It's because it hasn't been given enough opportunities to move well. And that's honestly really encouraging because movement is something we can improve. We can teach our bodies new patterns. We can become stronger. We can become more mobile. And we can absolutely move better than we do today. So now that you understand why your body gets stiff and how these joints work together, let's get into the part you've probably been waiting for. If I only had 10 minutes every day, what would I actually do? Let's build that routine together, okay? So for the practical part now, if I only had 10 minutes every day, what would I actually do? This is the routine that I come back to over and over again. It's a routine I personally use. I like to recommend it to clients all the time, and no, you don't have to do every single exercise every day for the rest of your life. Remember what we talked about earlier. Mobility isn't about finding one magical routine. It's about giving your body what it needs. But if I had to build a routine that would help the majority of people move better, this is where I'd start. The first thing I would do is 90-90 breathing. Yes, breathe. I know that probably sounds incredibly boring. You're thinking, really, Danielle, we're starting with breathing? Yes, because breathing changes things. One of the biggest things I see with clients is a shallow chest breathing, especially if they're stressed, if they're sitting all day, and especially if they're constantly rushing from one thing to another. When we breathe through our chest all day, our neck works harder. Our shoulders work harder. Our ribs don't move the way they should. Our core doesn't engage properly. Everything starts compensating. So before we ask our body to move well, let's teach it to breathe well. I like lying on my back with my knees bent and feet flat on the floor, taking one hand and placing it on my chest and then the other on my stomach. Taking a slow breath in through my nose, thinking about it expanding my ribs and not just my stomach. Then slowly exhaling through the mouth, letting my ribs come back down and repeating that all for about a minute. Nothing fancy, just breathing. You'd be amazed how different your body can feel after 60 seconds of just slowing everything down. Next, I want to get my spine moving. One of my favorite movements for this is cat to cow. Now, here's something important. This isn't meant to be a stretch. It's a movement. Move slowly. Really think about each part of your spine as you round. Feel each vertebrae moving. As you extend, don't crank your neck back. Just gently move through that range. I usually recommend around 8 slow repetitions. This is just waking up the spine, especially if you've been sitting or you just rolled out of bed. Then if I could only pick one mobility exercise, this would probably be near the top of the list because it gives you so much. You're opening the hips, stretching the hip flexors, mobilizing the hamstrings, getting thoracic rotation, moving the shoulders, working on balance, all in one movement. And that is the world's greatest stretch. If you've never done it before, start in a lunge, both hands inside your front foot, drop your back knee if you need to, then rotate your upper body toward your front leg and reach your arm toward the ceiling. Follow your hand with your eyes. Come back down. Repeat a few times before you switch sides. And remember, take your time. This isn't a race. Mobility is about quality and not speed. Now, the next one, a deep squat hold. Before some of you immediately think, Danielle, I can't squat that low, that's okay. This isn't about forcing yourself into some perfect squat. It's about exploring the position. If you need to hold onto a door frame, do it. If you need to put something underneath your heels to help, do it. If you can only get halfway down, that's okay. I simply want you to spend time in this position. Shift your weight from side to side. Take a few breaths, move your knees around, reach one arm overhead, just play with the position. Think of it less like stretching and more like having a conversation with your body. How does this feel today? What feels restricted? What feels easy? The deep squat is one of the most natural human positions. Children sit here all the time. Most adults can't do it anymore, not because we're broken, because we stopped using it. Try holding this position for anywhere between 30 to 60 seconds. You'll probably notice your ankles, your hips, and maybe even your upper back starting to wake up. Then next, the half kneeling ankle rocks. If you're a runner, if you lift weights, or if you walk, which hopefully all of us do, your ankles matter more than you probably realize. Poor ankle mobility can affect your squat, lunges, your walking, your running, even how your knees feel. This movement is incredibly simple. One foot in front, one knee down. Keep your heel flat on the floor. Slowly drive your front knee toward your toes, then come back. Don't lift your heel though, okay? Don't force it. Just explore the range. Do about 10 slow repetitions on each side. You'll be surprised how much difference and better ankle mobility you can see with just doing that, especially if you've always felt like your heels lift during your squats. Exercise number 6, the couch stretch. This is one most people either love or they absolutely hate because it works. The couch stretch is fantastic for opening up the front of the hip, especially if you spend a lot of your time sitting throughout the day. Because here's the mistake almost everyone makes. They arch their lower back. Don't do that. Instead, gently squeeze the glute on the leg that's being stretched, okay? Think about bringing your ribs down. Keep your pelvis underneath you. Now you'll actually feel a stretch where you're supposed to, not in your lower back. Hold for about 30 to 45 seconds per side and breathe. Don't hold your breath. Remember, breathing tells your nervous system that you're safe. Next one up is thread the needle. Let's give that upper back some attention. Our thoracic spine is designed to rotate. The problem is many of us spend our days looking at screens, driving, sitting in one position, so we lose some of that rotation. Thread the needle is one of my favorites because it gently restores movement while also encouraging breathing. Move slowly, reach, rotate, pause, then come back. You're not trying to force range. You're reminding your body that this movement exists. Around 6 to 8 repetitions per side works really well. Exercise number 8, wall slides. Now it's time to wake up those shoulders. Wall slides are one of those exercises that looks incredibly easy until you actually do them properly. So start by standing against a wall, keep your ribs down, keep your wrist and your elbows lightly touching the wall if possible, okay? Then slowly slide your arms overhead. What I love about this movement is that it teaches your shoulder blades to move the way they're supposed to. Because healthy shoulders don't just depend on the shoulder joint, they depend on the shoulder blade moving well too. Don't worry about getting all the way overhead, okay? Quality matters far more than range here. 8 to 10 slow repetitions is plenty. Exercise number 9, hip airplanes. This is probably the most advanced movement in this whole routine, so don't worry if it feels awkward at first, okay? Honestly, it feels pretty awkward for almost everyone. Hold onto a countertop if you need to. Stand on one leg, hinge slightly at the hips, then slowly rotate your pelvis open and then closed again. You're teaching your hip to control that rotation, not just to move through it. This exercise is incredible for runners, for lifters, for your balance or hip stability. And honestly, it's one that gets easier with practice. You don't need perfect range here. You just need that control. The last exercise that I want to finish with is the Cossack squat. I wanted to finish with something that was a movement that combines everything that we talked about, okay? Strength, mobility, control, range. Because at the end of the day, that's the goal. Stand with your feet wide, shift your weight towards one side, sit your hips back, keep the opposite leg long, then slowly move across to the other side. Go as low as your body feels comfortable and it will allow. This isn't about forcing yourself into some crazy position. It's about building strength in the range you already have. And over time, that range gets bigger. That's how mobility should work. We don't just stretch into new positions. We become strong enough to own them. When you put all of these exercises together, you're looking at roughly 8 to 10 minutes. And in those 10 minutes, you've addressed your breathing, your spine, your hips, your ankles, your thoracic spine, your shoulders, your balance, and your movement quality. That's a pretty incredible return on only 10 minutes. Now that you have the routine, the next question is probably, okay, Danielle, how often am I actually supposed to do this? And honestly, I think this is where a lot of people get overwhelmed because we have this idea that if we're going to go and work on our mobility, it needs to be this big hour-long stretching session. Maybe you picture somebody sitting on a yoga mat with candles lit, stretching for an hour, and if that's what you enjoy, great, go for it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if your goal is simply just to move better and feel better and keep your body healthy for the long run, you don't need an hour, you need consistency. One of my favorite analogies is brushing our teeth. Think about it. None of us brush our teeth for 2 hours every Sunday and then ignore them for the rest of the week. That wouldn't make much sense, right? Instead, we spend a couple of minutes every day taking care of them. Our bodies are no different. 5 to 10 intentional minutes every day will almost always beat an hour once every couple of weeks because your body responds to what you do consistently, not occasionally. If I had to give you one recommendation, I'd say this. Aim for 5 to 10 minutes most days of the week. Does it have to be every single day? No. But if you can make it part of your daily routine, you're much more likely to stick with it. Maybe that's while your coffee is brewing, or before your workout, or maybe after work when you first get home. Maybe it's while you're watching TV in the evening. I honestly don't care when you do it. I care that you actually do it. Now let's talk about timing, because I get asked this quite a bit. Should I do mobility before my workout or after? My answer is it depends on why you're doing it. If you're about to lift weights or go for a run, I like using mobility as preparation. Think of it as telling your body, hey, this is how we're about to move. If today is a lower body workout, I'm spending, a little more than time on my ankles maybe, or my hips and glutes, maybe my thoracic spine. But if it's an upper body day, I'm going to pay a little more attention to my shoulders and my upper back and my rib cage. You don't necessarily need to do the entire routine every single time. Just prepare the areas you're about to ask the most from. Now, what about after your workout? Honestly, I think that's a great time to slow everything back down. Maybe we spend a few minutes breathing. Open up the areas you worked. Help your body relax a little. I'm generally not trying to force huge stretches after training. I'm simply helping my body recover. Now, what if you don't work out? Maybe you sit at a desk all day. Maybe you're retired. Maybe you're just trying to move a little better. Here's what I'd recommend. Instead of thinking, I need one big mobility session, think, how can I move more often? One of the biggest things I encourage clients to do is what I call movement snacks. Just little opportunities to move throughout your day. Maybe every hour you stand up, roll your shoulders, do a few cat-to-cows, walk around the office, take a couple of deep breaths. Maybe you do 5 bodyweight squats before you sit back down. None of those things take more than a minute or two, but they remind your body we're still moving. Because honestly, our bodies love variety. What they don't love is staying in the same exact position for 8 hours straight. And if you're someone who's training for something specific, maybe you're trying to train for a half marathon like I am, or you're lifting weights regularly, mobility becomes even more valuable. Not because it's going to magically make you faster or stronger overnight, but because better movement usually leads to better training. When my ankles move well, my runs feel smoother. When my hips are moving well, my squats feel stronger. When my upper back is moving well, pressing overhead feels so much better. It's not about chasing perfect mobility. It's about removing unnecessary restrictions so your body can actually do what you're asking it to do. Now, here's another question I hear all the time. How do I know if it's actually working? Because let's be honest, you're probably not going to wake up one morning and suddenly think, wow, I'm mobile now. It doesn't really work like that. Instead, start paying attention to the little things. Can you squat a little deeper? Do your shoulders feel better reaching overhead? Can you tie your shoes without feeling like your hamstrings are going to snap? Do you get up off the couch a little easier? Does your back feel better after sitting? Can you lift with better technique? Those are all wins. Sometimes mobility improvements are subtle, but they add up over weeks and months and years. One thing I like to remind people is this: the goal isn't to become the most flexible person in the room. The goal is to keep doing the things you love. If mobility allows you to keep hiking in your 60s, playing with your grandkids, lifting weights without pain, traveling comfortably, gardening, playing pickleball, running, or simply getting up off the floor with confidence, then that's doing exactly what it's meant to do. And honestly, that's how I want you to think about mobility moving forward. Not as another thing you have to do, but as an investment in your future self. Because one of the things I love most about fitness is that we're not just training for today. We're training for the life we want to keep living 10, 20, or even 30 years from now. And mobility is one of those habits that quietly pays you back for years to come. So, before we wrap up this episode, I want to leave you with a few of the biggest mistakes I see people making when it comes to mobility. Because if you can avoid these, you're going to get so much more out of the 10 minutes you're already putting in. Because honestly, sometimes it's not that you're doing too little, it's that you're putting your effort into the wrong things. Mistake number 1, you only work on your mobility when something hurts. This is probably the biggest one. Someone tweaks their shoulder or their hips feels tight and their back starts bothering them, and suddenly they're motivated to work on mobility. Then the pain settles down, the mobility routine disappears. Until the next time something starts hurting. Think of mobility like brushing your teeth. You don't wait until you have a cavity to start brushing. You take care of them consistently because you want to prevent problems. Mobility is exactly the same. Don't wait until your body's asking for help. Stay ahead of it. Mistake number 2. You think tighter means you need more stretching. Remember what we talked about earlier. Sometimes it does, but not always. Sometimes tightness is your body's way of saying, I don't feel stable here, or that it doesn't trust the movement, or that it's working harder than it should be because another muscle isn't doing its job. If you constantly stretch something and it keeps coming back, it's probably time to ask why, not just stretch harder. Mistake number 3, you're always chasing the next mobility exercise. I see this online all the time. Someone posts the one stretch you need for tight hips. The next week, it's another one and another one. Pretty soon, people have 50 different mobility drills saved on Instagram, and they aren't doing any of them consistently. Here's what I'd rather see. Find 6 to 10 movements that work well for your body. Learn them, get good at them, be consistent, and you don't need to do a new routine every week. You just need repetition. Mistake number 4, you're forcing positions your body isn't ready for. Mobility should challenge you, yes. It shouldn't feel aggressive. It shouldn't feel like you're trying to win a stretching competition. One of the biggest mistakes I see people forcing themselves into positions is because they think that they should be able to get there. Instead, meet your body where it's at today. Your mobility routine shouldn't be about proving something. It should be about improving something. That's a difference. Now, mistake number 5, you forget to breathe. This one sounds so simple, but it's huge. If you're holding your breath through every stretch, your body is probably guarding. Breathing tells your nervous system you're safe. It allows your muscles to relax. It helps you actually access better movement. So throughout every exercise we talked about today, keep breathing. It might honestly be the most important cue that I can give you. Mistake number 6. You think mobility is separate from strength training. I actually think strength training is one of the best ways to improve your mobility if you're moving well. Think about a deep squat or a Romanian deadlift or a split squat or an overhead press even. Those exercises take you through large ranges of motion. If you're controlling those movements well, you're building mobility while you're building strength. That's why I don't separate the two. Good strength training reinforces good mobility, and good mobility allows you to get more out of your strength training. They work together. Mistake number 7, you expect results too quickly. I think social media has convinced us that everything should happen fast. We want to do one mobility session and wake up feeling like a completely different person. That's not how your body works. Remember, your body has adapted to years of sitting, years of repetitive movement, years of habits. Give it time to adapt in the other direction too. Small improvements compound, just like strength, just like nutrition, just like fitness. So, before I let you go, I want to give you a little challenge. For the next 30 days, set a timer for 10 minutes. That's it, 10 minutes. Run through this movement reset. Not perfectly, not aggressively, just consistently. And I want you to stop judging your progress by whether you can suddenly touch your toes. Instead, pay attention to the little things. How do you feel getting out of bed? How do your hips feel after sitting? Do your shoulders feel okay reaching overhead? How does your body feel after a workout? How do your walks feel, your runs? How does your squat feel? All those things. Those are the changes that matter. I also want to remind you of something. Mobility isn't about becoming the most flexible person in the room. It's about creating a body that supports the life you want to live. A body that lets you hike, lift weights, travel, play with your kids, run races, garden, carry groceries, get up off the floor, and continue doing those things for decades. Because that's what health is really about. It's not just looking healthy. It's having a body that's capable of supporting the life you want to live. If you take one thing away from today's episode, let it be this. Movement is medicine, not punishment, not something you earn, not something you squeeze in only when you have time. Movement is one of the greatest investments you can make in your future self. And mobility is one of the ways we can protect that investment. Your body isn't asking for perfection. It's asking for regular opportunities to move the way it was designed to move. So if you've been putting mobility off or thinking, I'll get to it eventually, let today be the day that you start. 10 minutes, that's all I'm asking. Your future self will thank you for it. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I hope this episode helped you understand mobility in a completely different way and gave you a routine that you could actually use. If you found this episode helpful, I'd love for you to share it with a friend, a family member who's always saying that they're too stiff or they're getting old. Sometimes all it takes is a different way of looking at movement.